perfect warm-up. So what we're trying to do is get ourselves ready to train, improve our performance and reduce injury risk. The first part's going to be super simple. Pick your favorite cardio machine, go on it for 5 to 10 minutes until you start to work up a light sweat and your heart rate is slightly elevated. At that point, we're going to know that your core is nice and warm, and that's going to be one of the main mechanisms that will help to prevent injury risk. It might not be essential in a hot country. I live in a hot country. Typically, I skip that part. So the body mobilizer is something that I got from the Gray Institute. And the rationale is we're exposing all of the joints in the body that can move through all 3 planes of motion. And those planes of motion are forwards and backwards, side to side, and rotational, or fancy words, sagittal, frontal, transverse, respectively. So what we're going to do is a variety of movements. First, I'm going to focus on the spine, then I'm going to focus on the shoulders, then I'm going to focus on the hips / foot and ankle. And so let me just show you exactly how we're going to tackle this. So for each of these movements, for the spine, we're going to do 5 on each side, or if it's bilateral, i.e. both sides at the same time, 5. And the first one, we're just going to flex the spine by reaching down and extend the spine by reaching up. And you'll notice obviously that the hips are flexing and extending as well. So we're actually 2 for 1, hitting the hips and the spine. And you're just going to do 5 reps. So that's the sagittal plane, forwards and backwards. We're now going to go onto the frontal plane, side to side. And simply what we're going to do here is keep the hips stable, reach one hand over the crown of the head, return to center, other hand over, return to center. So you're going to do 5 on each side, or 10 in total. Okay, so that is your frontal plane movement where we're laterally flexing the spine. Next one, rotation. Hands forwards, try and round out the shoulders, and we're just going to keep the feet stable again. So we don't want too much hip movement, and we're just going to do just one side now. I prefer to go to one side and the center, just so that we're not building too much momentum in that rotational movement by going through one side straight to the other. Okay, so that's why we just do one side, and that also means that we can focus on keeping the hips stable a lot easier. So we're going to do 5 reps on each side. So next we're exposing the shoulder joint to all 3 planes of motion with some reaches, and the Gray Institute call this the shoulder reach matrix. And so what we're going to do is simply elbows in, and we're going to allow some rotation through the body. Reach forwards, come back to center, reach forwards, come back to center. Okay, like so. Now once you've done that, we then reach behind. Okay, so we flex the shoulder. Now we're extending the shoulder. Next, we actually can omit this because we did this to laterally flex the spine. So that's already been done. So now we're going to go for some rotational movements. Internal rotation first. And I allow the foot to pivot, push into the foot, come back down, all the way up, push into the foot, come back down. And here we're exposing the hips to some extension as well. And obviously we're getting some nice rotation and really flexing the shoulder now. And then finally, we're just going to externally rotate the shoulders by reaching back. So it's like you're trying to turn on some light bulbs or change a light bulb that's behind you. And here, you're going to notice we're getting some nice rotation through the hips, but also you're going to be getting some rotation through the foot and ankle as well. Okay, these are all very passive movements. So now we're going to expose the hips through all 3 planes of motion with some unilateral movements, which are essentially lunges. And so to take the nomenclature from the Gray Institute, this is called the lunge matrix. Now, you've obviously potentially got to be quite strong and stable to do this. So I would say for each of the movement orientations that we do, just work to the range that you've got rather than, and what I mean there is don't feel like you have to do a full lunge if that's really difficult. If all it is a step, that's absolutely fine to begin. But I'm just going to go through all of the movements now. So firstly, we're going to go sagittal plane forwards. So lunge, and what I want you to do is opposite arm, opposite leg. Okay, moving contralaterally like so, just because that's how humans move efficiently. And so it's really good to train that pattern if that's something that you're not typically used to. If I get an athlete, they would usually do that automatically. But if you're someone who hasn't trained for years, you might find it very difficult to coordinate that, but really important that you train that contralateral movement just from a human movement and human efficiency and movement perspective. So you just want to do 3 on either side. So we've gone forwards and back. That's actually going to be more difficult than the one that we're going to do now, the reverse lunge, opposite arm, opposite leg, knee to the floor. And we're just focusing on hips going straight down. 3 on either side. And so that's the sagittal plane looked after, forwards and back. We've exposed the hip to flexion and extension. The next, we've got frontal plane, side to side, and we're going to be doing abduction. So taking the femur away from the pelvis. And the movement that we've got for that is this side lunge like so. Now, once again, you can limit the range like so, but ideally, what you do want to do is make sure that this leg is locked as you perform the movement. And again, you're going to see we've got contralateral movement between the arm, opposite leg, this hand coming behind, so that we've got nice, efficient, athletic movement. And just try and get the range that you can. So once you've done 3 on either side, we've looked after abduction. We're now going to go into adduction, which is where the hip falls towards the femur. And so we're going to go leg behind, knee to the floor, opposite arm, opposite leg, stand up. Now this is probably going to be the hardest one. So if all you can do is this, I really don't mind. Okay, it's all about just gradual exposure at the start. And then once you start to feel more comfortable and you know you can keep tension throughout the whole range of motion, then we can start to go all the way down. So we've looked after the frontal plane. Now for the transverse plane, I'm only going to do 1. Transverse plane is internal rotation, external rotation. I'm just going to do external rotation because the internal rotation is extremely awkward. It's essentially this movement here, crossing forwards and then coming back and almost rotating over the leg and coming back, okay? I think it's just a bit too advanced and unnecessary. So typically we'll just do, and it's like a big side lunge but back and away from you. Opposite arm, opposite leg, get some depth and come up. And you'll notice, again, it's not just the hips getting in on the act here, but it's the foot and ankle as well. So we're going into really flattening the foot into this plantar flex position before we come into this nice dorsiflex position here, like so, okay? So again, 3 on each side, opposite arm, opposite leg. You can, again, just do gradual exposure. And then once you've done that, you've done all the dynamic movements that we want. So it's time to do some more lift-specific stuff. The next is going to be something lift-specific, and we're going to use the squats as an example. Now, if you're doing something that's more hypertrophy, i.e. 8 reps plus, then the rep scheme I recommend is 8 reps, 4 reps, 2 reps. And then if you're doing something more strength-specific, so 5 reps below, 5 reps, 4 reps, 3 reps, 2 reps, 1 rep. As we go through those rep schemes in your warm-up set, we're obviously going to be getting heavier and heavier to gradually expose you to the weight on the bar so that you can perform that as effectively as possible. And there's an overlay on the screen that I have taken from Muscle Strength Pyramid, written by Andy Morgan and Eric Helms, which illustrates his warm-up protocol perfectly. So there's your warm-up. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.